Hey there, let's jump right into this explainer for your social studies skills and tools assessment rehearsal. If you're a grade 7 learner gearing up to tackle ancient history, you're exactly in the right place today. We're going to build your essential detectives toolkit for investigating the ancient world. Because look, before we can dive into all those incredible stories of early civilizations, we really have to lay down the foundation. We need to know exactly how to look at the past, just like a detective walking right into a mystery. By the end of our time together, you'll be fully equipped and totally rehearsed for your assessment. Let's do this.
Here is the historian's toolkit we're going to build today. Section 1 covers maps and geographic tools. Section 2 looks at chronology and organizing time. Section 3 dives right into evaluating sources. And finally, Section 4 wraps up with communicating conclusions.
Starting with Section 1, Maps and Geographic Tools. This is all about understanding the real world. Usually, we just think of maps as that app on our phones that gets us from point A to point B, right? But in history, we actually need to think of geographic tools, like maps and graphs, as the literal crime scene where historical events took place. When you're looking at an ancient civilization, you have to use these tools to analyze the physical space. Where exactly were the rivers? Where were the mountain ranges? Figuring out the layout of the land is the absolute first step in understanding why things happened the way they did. So the crucial takeaway here is that a good historian uses geographic tools to figure out human behavior. Why did people settle where they did? How in the world did they survive in that specific environment? When you're looking at a map of the ancient world on your assessment, please don't just memorize the names of the cities. Look for the real-world connections. Did a society develop a massive trading network just because they happened to be on a coastline? Or did they invent specific farming technologies because of the way their local river systems flooded? Maps hold the answers to all these fundamental real-world questions.
Now that we know where things happened, we definitely need to know when. Section 2, chronology and organizing time. Let's build that timeline of events.
Every detective needs a timeline to establish the order of events, and in social studies, we call this chronology. Measuring and organizing time into manageable units is a totally foundational skill that you're going to use all year long. So here are your basic building blocks. A decade is 10 years, a century is 100 years, and a millennium is a whopping 1,000 years. And when we're dealing with ancient history, we're almost always talking in terms of millennia. Grasping these concepts allows us to actually see cause and effect. I mean, we literally can't understand how a massive civilization fell if we don't know the proper order of events that led up to it. So always anchor your investigations in a clear chronological timeline.
Next up, Section 3, evaluating sources. These are essentially the witness statements of the past.
This is a massive part of your toolkit. You absolutely have to know the difference between someone who is actually in the room, a primary source, and someone who is just reporting on it or analyzing it way later, which is a secondary source. A primary source could be an ancient clay tablet, a broken piece of pottery, or a letter written by an emperor. It's totally firsthand. On the flip side, a secondary source would be the history textbook you're reading in class right now. Both are incredibly useful for sure, but as an investigator of history, you have to treat them differently. You always need to ask yourself, am I looking at the raw evidence here, or am I reading someone else's interpretation of that evidence? And listen, just because a source exists doesn't mean we automatically trust it. We have to test both its credibility and its reliability. First, are you looking at a credible source? Meaning, is it even believable? Is the author actually an expert in what they're talking about? And second, is it reliable? Is the information consistent with other things we already know? Is it unbiased, or is the author maybe trying to trick us or push a specific political agenda? Evaluating sources is a core skill for a very good reason. You simply cannot build a strong historical argument on weak, untrustworthy evidence. All right, let's pause for a quick misconception check to see if you can actively apply this reasoning. Think about this for a second. Are primary sources always more reliable than secondary sources? Take a moment to really think about what we just discussed regarding bias and trust. And the answer is absolutely not. This is a trap that so many early historians fall into. While primary sources are amazing because they are first-hand accounts, they can be highly biased. Think about it. If an ancient king carves a giant stone monument bragging about his own battle, is he going to admit if he made a massive strategic mistake? No way. He has a completely limited perspective and obvious bias. In that case, a really well-researched secondary source, written by a modern historian who has looked at evidence from both sides of the battle, might actually be way more reliable. You must always corroborate your evidence. That means you check it against other sources to find the real truth. Finally, Section 4, communicating conclusions. It's time to make your final case. We've reached the point in our investigation where you act as the prosecutor, making your final case to the jury. You have to communicate your conclusions using solid, evidence-based writing. The single most effective way to structure this is through CER, claim, evidence, and reasoning. Let's break this down real quick. Step 1, make a claim. This is your direct, punchy answer to the historical inquiry question. It's your thesis. Step 2, provide evidence. This is where you pull in data, quotes, and cold, hard facts from those credible and reliable sources we just talked about. And finally, step 3, state your reasoning. Do not ever assume the evidence just speaks for itself. It doesn't. You have to clearly explain exactly how that piece of evidence proves your claim. If you can lock down this 3-step structure, your assessment responses are going to be incredibly strong.
All right, final assessment practice. Let's test your historian toolkits and make sure you're ready to rock this.
Let's test out the toolkit in action. Imagine your practice prompt asks, why did the Egyptian civilization thrive along the Nile? When you sit down for your rehearsal, I want you to actively check off these 4 criteria against that prompt. Ask yourself, did I utilize a geographic tool to actually understand the physical space around the river? Did I organize my events chronologically so the timeline makes sense to the reader? Did I carefully evaluate my sources for bias and credibility before using them to understand Egyptian life? And lastly, did I formulate a clear evidence-based conclusion using claim, evidence, and reasoning? If you can check all 4 of these boxes, you have officially proven that you've mastered these foundational skills.
To sum up our explainer today, mastering these tools guarantees a seriously strong start to your year. Remember, geography isn't just random lines on paper. It connects ancient peoples to the actual physical world. Chronology brings order to the total chaos of time. Sources are never, ever automatically trusted. They must be rigorously evaluated. And your brilliant historical conclusions must always be backed up by solid evidence. These are the standards that form the absolute bedrock of middle school social studies.
I really hope this explainer leaves you feeling empowered and completely confident for your assessment rehearsal. You now possess a complete professional historian's toolkit. So the only question left for you is, what fascinating parts of the ancient world are you going to investigate first? Good luck on your assessment. You've got this. And keep asking great questions.